You see hearing now? Can you hear me now? We are live. Okay, good. Okay, good. You say we are live now, yeah. Okay.
Where's this water?
Oh. Now.
I hear you. No, I don't want tea. Anybody who sees this will think that food.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Which part of the world you're in? We appreciate your joining in today for this live session of the Tell Africa. We also apologize for the slight delay in coming online. When you're dealing with high-profile individuals, we have to work within their timing and space.
I know. I won't accept that. It's your machine. I was.
We want to most sincerely appreciate His Excellency also for making our time for this all-important session. Tell Africa is a platform where we engage former presidents and former leaders in Africa on accountable leadership after their exit in office. And since we commenced this process, the inaugural session, which started in Mozambique in 2021, had the former president of Mozambique and the current chairperson of the former president of Africa, President Joaquim Chissano, as the inaugural guest. We've engaged former leaders outside Nigeria, and we are opportuned to interact and engage the former president of Nigeria, His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo, as the first former leader in Nigeria that will be coming up on the Tell Africa platform. And since Tell Africa has been on board, the feedback, the acknowledgement has been the platform has evolved in a way that it's been stimulating, it's been revealing, and it's also been a knowledge-driven platform. So without wasting much time, we will dive into this particular session. And before asking His Excellency to start responding to some of the questions that we'll be asking him, questions around foreign relations, foreign diplomacy, questions around domestic interventions, around conflict management, around the elections, how he's been able to take some critical decisions. What are the impacts of those decisions? I mean, when you don't make some decisions, when there When you are indecisive, does that also amount to decisions? Because we understand that following reactive and proactive policies and engagements, arising from proactive and reactive engagements or policy decisions, central to that is leadership. And that is why we find it very important to engage former leaders in Africa and blend it with some academic discourse so that people are better informed on how to make decisions when it comes to leadership, when it comes to governance, when it comes to conflict management, among other things. Before I call on the Executive Director of African Leadership Foundation to give an opening remark, I want to most appreciate the ALF, the Executive Director, and the founder, His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo, for partnering with us on this initiative, as well as the Nigerian Institute for International Affairs, that has been an abiding partner in this engagement across Africa and the globe. We celebrate you. So without much ado, I'm going to call on Dr. Ajayi, who is the Executive Officer, to give us an opening remark that is linked to the theme of this subject matter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adeolu. I want to, on behalf of the African Leadership Foundation, welcome all of us to this Experiential Leadership Program, which is jointly organized by Tell Africa, the African Leadership Forum, and the Nigeria Institute for International Affairs. When Mr. Adeolu first brought this idea to me, I said, well, this is fine. This is in line with the programmatic trajectory of the African Leadership Foundation, and we'll be willing to collaborate with him in this regard. The African Leadership Foundation was established in 1988 by His Excellency Chief President Olusegun Obasanjo as a Pan-African civil society organization tasked with the mission to assist improving capacity of leaders across Africa. And we have been able to do this focusing on the area of leadership, governance, gender and development, digital and economic empowerment, and sustainable development and peace for the past 35 years. We have thrived, and we are happy to say that under the leadership of His Excellency, we have been able to move ALF to engage with leaders both at all levels, junior, middle level, and senior level, and we have been able to contribute to development within the continent. For example, today we all heard about NEPAD, about APRM. It's actually as a result of the program that earlier developed by His Excellency called the Conference on Security, Stability, and Cooperation in Africa, which we call the CSSDCA. Apart from that, ALF has concentrated many years trying to train young people in the area of democratic leadership, and many of our trainees and ex-ALF participants have gone ahead to make impact both in the private sector and also in the public sector. Of recent, ALF, working with the African Union, has been able to also move into the area of human rights accountability mechanism, in which we have been able to develop what is now known as Maputo Protocol scorecard and index that is being used to actually measure the performance of member states in actually implementing the content of this, which is part of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. On economic empowerment, ALF over the years, in the last 15 years or so, are deeply involved in raising young businessmen, young entrepreneurs, and we have been able to train up to 36,000 entrepreneurs and facilitate small loans for them. And so we are so happy when we heard that, okay, this is going to take place. It's a need for us to also learn from the wealth of experience of His Excellency and guide future leaders who will also be involved in the area of governance and leadership, both in private and public sector. Once again, on behalf of the ALF, I wish to welcome you to this interactive session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ajayi, for that very helpful introductory remark, which has set us on a very good stead for this session. I'm going to call on Professor Ehosa Osage, who is a profound academic and has also he has distinguished himself in administration. He's a global citizen, I would I would refer to him like that. And we appreciate you for your support over the time that we've been involved together in this. And over to you, Your Excellency, Professor Ehosa Osage.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah,
Yes, we can.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency, Baba Africa.
Professor,
every time
thank you very much. It's nice seeing you, beaming with smiles. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Baba. Every time we have thought of Africa, I think, we have all come to agree that, there are those people that stand out as pillars for referencing Africa in various dimensions. The reason we call President Obasanjo Baba Africa is that he is very, very prominently and eminently a deep, deep pillar for Africa. Baba Africa has led from the front in virtually every respect, up until the last minute when, most recently, he led the peace process in Ethiopia. Baba Africa has been at the vanguard, of a Pan-Africanist movement. And the Africa Leadership Forum is one that showed the world how very forward-looking Baba Africa was that long ago. He's been, virtually everything that Africa would need. In South Africa, you cannot, write the history without the name of, General Olusegun Obasanjo, as it then was. He contributed very, very immensely and prominently with such great dignity and, flair to the transition in the country, the release of Mandela and the subsequent post-apartheid transition. The liberation of the whole of Southern Africa, those liberation movements and so on, owe a lot to his leadership of Nigeria at the time. Now, if we want to talk globally, he also has to be one of the best known, Africans of this generation. The world acknowledges him in every respect. I don't remember if there was any important committee that was global in nature that didn't have an Obasanjo imprint. Now, when this whole conversation series started, we had the President Chissano of Mozambique. And the whole idea was to say, look, people like President Obasanjo have seen it all. They are in front and they are still here. Why don't we engage them so that, we can learn the right lessons from them? Leadership is not something that you bring from heaven. Leadership is something that is grown and constructed and is put in practice in our lives. Baba Obasanjo has seen it at the national level. He's seen it at the continental level. He's seen it at the global level. In all of this, we remember the great things he has done. But perhaps there are things, upon reflection, he would say, maybe if I had another opportunity, I would not do it this way. Maybe I made some mistakes. Maybe I didn't know that these things would turn out to be like this. Were there things, for instance, he didn't think highly about that turned out to be game changers and world beaters in manners that he himself didn't expect? So this is the essence of this conversation. And we thought we should bring on board Professor Richard Joseph, one of the most committed Africanist scholars of the American extraction. Professor Richard Joseph, has Africa in mind when he wakes up and when he goes back to sleep. in his writings, in his scholarship. He has been African at heart. And his greatest worry today is, why is Nigeria, for instance, not where it should be? Why is Africa not where it should be? And so we thought we should bring him to engage this process and have a robust discussion. On behalf of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, we'd like to say how very glad and proud we are to be partnering with Dumi and all of us at the AFL on this project. Tell Africa has come to stay, and there are many more things that we would achieve together. So, Baba, I welcome you. I'm very glad that we are able to have you on this forum. The whole of Africa is waiting to learn from you. The whole world is waiting to learn from you. Professor Richard Joseph, welcome on board, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation. Thank you.
Richard, nice to see you again. How are you doing?
Yes, sir. Yes, we continue.
I like that. I like that.
Thank you so much, Professor Osage, Ewosa Osage. I mean, it's always insightful to have you speak and hear you give a background to subject matters. We appreciate you, and we continue to look forward to your partnership on the Tell Africa initiative. Before I go over to the Emeritus Professor Richard Joseph, who wakes and sleeps as an African, I would want to call upon a distinguished professor also, Professor Onyeso, who she's distinguished herself in the area of gender interventions, and among other things. She was, until recently, international president for the Women International League for Peace and Freedom. So she's a Nigerian that should actually be celebrated the more. So Professor Joy, you're welcome on board. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. My warmest regards. The organizers of this event. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for this conversation, which is very apt and really, really coming at the right time. When we talk about issues relating to leadership and development, it continues to gain currency around the world, especially in developing countries like Nigeria. And the simple reason is that these two concepts, leadership and development, have a direct bearing on the well-being of the masses, especially the poor masses. So if we look at Nigeria, it is generally acknowledged that we're blessed in all ramifications. We have all the resources, but we're bankrupt with visionary and selfless leaders. The growth, our development doesn't match the resources that we have within the country. And this now highlights the critical issues of leadership, development, and inclusive governance. We're at that phase in Nigeria where we really need to start looking at effective national leadership development strategy. So I'm really excited that we have in our midst here today His Excellency, who will be sharing his perspective and some of his retrospects. When we look at critical areas in Nigeria, I'm talking about gender inclusion, conflict resolution and transformation, security architecture, agriculture, and elections. We would see that our country is limping, if not almost crippled. And our economy is suffering from lack of effective policies and inadequate implementation mechanisms. Because the argument has always been, oh, but we have policies. But when we look at the implementation framework, we see that there is a huge gap between the policies we have and the implementation on ground. We also see the divide in terms of the class of implementation, who has access to what resources, who actually gets involved, who actually gets to participate. This brings to fore the question of executive decision making or indecision and its impact on the populace. Who bears the brunt? What kind of quality and value system do we want to have in place in Nigeria? We saw the impact of COVID-19 globally, and in Nigeria in particular, the fragility of our system and the corruption in our systems were exposed. Sadly, we haven't seen a leveraging on the lessons learned, because we would have thought that the doors of opportunities for reform and growth that were opened would have been leveraged on to create some of the transformation that we really want to see in the country. If we look at the current security crisis in Nigeria, we see that it has deepened. Practically all parts of the country is facing one form of violence or conflict. We have the prevalent herders farmers conflict. We see kidnapping, banditry, militancy, terrorism, and all other forms of conflict across Nigeria. Before we say it's in the northeast, now it's everywhere. South, southeast, all part of Nigeria. And we haven't seen strong and effective leadership in addressing these issues. We ponder over our past performance, even our non-performance, we would realize that we have lost a few or even many golden opportunities, mainly due to ineffective and corrupt leadership over the years. During the recent review of the Constitution, Nigeria lost an opportunity to take a bold action on our various commitments on women's empowerment and inclusive governance. We saw all the 4 gender bills that were presented were rejected. This same lack of inclusion permeates our electoral system. We have a system and process that most citizens do not trust, and that's why we witness a lot of voters apathy. Conflict, violence, and countless electoral petitions are hallmarks of our elections. It is very obvious that we need to change the current trajectory. It is often said that how well a society treats its women is one of the strongest indicators of the success and health of that society. So it is not surprising that Nigeria is burdened with this avalanche of issues, seeing the lack of inclusiveness and enabling environment for the empowerment of women. I'm really excited at the opportunity this conversation opens up, bearing in mind that we're in the middle of an active electoral period. This is the time that we have to elect representatives that can take bold executive decisions to move the nation forward. My dream is to see a Nigeria that is inclusive, with an effective leadership, maximizing our potentials, and really trailing the blaze as the giant of Africa in actions and not just in name. So thank you so much for having me here. I look forward to the conversations and interactions that we have. And it's really a pleasure to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Joy. And we look forward to further comments from you as we proceed. I would now call on Professor Emeritus Professor Richard Joseph from the Northwestern University in the United States, who has been very passionate, and I mean very passionate about Tell Africa to get things going. And there's something, some interesting story I heard about Prof. He was a lecturer in the late 70s in Nigeria in UI, Ibadan School of Thought, and somehow the students that he's lectured, they are all doing profoundly well across the globe now. And there's this contestation on, okay, is Prof a Nigerian or a US citizen? So we would like to know where you want to place yourself, Prof. So Prof, Emeritus Professor Richard Joseph, you're welcome on board.
Richard, if I can save you the problem of your location. First, you are a human being, which I know you are to be, but not just a human being, a humane and humanitarian human being, which to me is very important. Whether you are black or white, yellow or red, you are a humane and humanitarian human being. But more importantly, anybody who looks at you has no doubt at where he can place you. And then, of course, your reputation as an African. That even we're here in Nigeria, but whether you are a Nigerian or a Ghanaian or an American, what matters to me is you are a black, humane, and humanitarian human being. I don't know whether that describes you adequately, but you can describe yourself whichever way you want after that, Richard.
Thank you much. Thank you much, sir. And, in reflecting on this important occasion, I have been looking back over about 40 plus years of engagement. And although there are many developments in the past, I would like to call upon President Obasanjo to address. My comments today, I'll have the opportunity to intervene at various times, is what Professor Asage has said about Nigeria not being where it should be and Africa not being where it should be. So I have prepared some comments and I will read them. Thank you. When I first arrived in Nigeria at the end of February 1976, this was just a few weeks after President Obasanjo, then General Obasanjo, became Nigeria's head of state following the slaying of General Murtala Muhammad. We have interacted at several times since that occasion, momentous occasion. In September 1996, I wrote him a letter while he was imprisoned by the Abacha regime. It concluded, "Our paths are destined to cross again. I hope that in our respective realms, we can help put together what has been severely sundered," and I'm referring to Nigeria. "How are hopes mended and dreams rebuilt? We must find out." On January 1st, 2023, during the 70th birthday celebration for Professor Toyin Falola, President Obasanjo remarked that Nigeria was unraveling. I don't have to tell this audience about the afflictions experienced by Nigerians and the decline of the country in many sectors. So, how will our hopes for Nigeria and Africa be mended and the dreams of a bright future be rebuilt? Virtually every Thursday for several years, the column written for Punch newspaper by Professor Ayo Olukotun arrived in our email inboxes. There will not be one today or any other Thursday hereafter. Sadly, this patriotic giant passed on January 4th. In his last column on December 15, 2022, Professor Olukotun spoke of, quote, "the misfortune of misgovernance." By the way, I used that term misgovernance in my inaugural lecture as professor at Northwestern, on misgovernance and the African predicament. But anyway, Professor Olusegun referred to the need to unleash the power of leadership. It's almost as if he was foreseeing this event today. Unleash the power of leadership. Nigeria does not need, he said, this is Olusegun, quote, to live perpetually in regret, with the young ones scampering out of the country because they do not see a future for themselves. By the way, we have this term futureless youth, which is one that's been around for a good 20 years now. And that future has been steadily diminishing. While we are hopeful that the upcoming elections in Nigeria will proceed peacefully and efficiently, we know from experience that elected governments alone cannot solve the huge problems facing the nation. I have put forward suggestions in various essays, including recently one entitled Nigeria Reimagined, Beyond Uncertainty and Insecurity. And you could go to the website africacli.org. It was posted on October 30th of 2022. President Obasanjo has had more experience of leadership and governance as a military officer, as a head of state and president, and throughout the African continent and globally than any other Nigerian. To echo a comment made by Her Excellency Dr. Tokunbo Awolowo Dosomu during the January 1 event, she asks, how can Nigeria be fixed? How can the rampant insecurity throughout the country be reduced? How can Nigerian children be guaranteed a basic education? The list of woes and shortcomings are long, and the recommendations are abundant. So where do we start? President Joseph Biden, and this is my last paragraph, declared at the US-Africa Leaders Summit last month, quote, all in for Africa's future. We can ask today, and I really look forward to hearing from President Obasanjo, right? In addition to what he distills from the past, what he can share with us about the present and the future. So the question, what would all in for Nigeria look like? Perhaps the Africa Leadership Foundation, together with other institutions, can convene an agenda-setting meeting of national, global, and indeed historic significance. Professor Olusegun spoke of, quote, redemptive models of leadership and governance for Nigeria. But what are those models? We have access to all the resources needed to identify and implement them. And this, I consider, one of the most critical questions of this period. And I know that my colleagues and I would be willing to contribute to such an effort. So again, President Obasanjo, I was looking forward to hearing your leading off comments, and I sit ready to respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emeritus Professor Richard, for your intervention. Quite inspiring and incisive. There are questions, potent questions, there are comments that I'm sure His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo would want to also contribute to or respond to. But before diving into several of these questions that we have for him, it's good to understand, Your Excellency, you You left government in 2007 as a 70-year-old. You'll be 86 this year, sir. What has kept you going? What's the staying factor? Is it the investment in personal development? Is it as a result of your military background? What has been that staying factor that has kept you relevant, not only in Nigeria, but globally?
Well, thank you very much. What has kept me relevant? I think.
Active.
Well, I will come. I will take them one by one.
Yes.
What has kept me relevant? I think you may have to ask God. But what has kept me active? Partly asking God, and of course, partly asking me. I have always believed that as a human being, I must always strive to do something. Something that I believe is relevant, is important, it will touch and impact on lives and on people. In fact, I want to do something also almost new every day, and something that will affect others for good. Whether it is political, economic, social, whatever. I want to wake up every day and make sure that I'm doing something that is relevant and that will touch life. Whether life at my village level or life at the extended family level or life at the community level or life at the state level or life at the national level or life at the regional level in West Africa or in East Africa or life at the continental level or global level. And when I get people feeling that what I have said, what I have done has impact on people's life, I feel really fulfilled. Let me just give you an example.
Okay, sir.
Recently, about 17 months ago, I was appointed High Representative of the AU for the Horn of Africa to promote peace, security, stability, and, of course, communication among the people. 8 countries in the Horn of Africa. And the first thing, of course, I did was to identify the fact that, yes, there are 8 countries. Each of the 8 countries has its own problem, but what must be regarded as the core or the centerpiece, and it is Ethiopia. If Ethiopia is sorted out, it will have ramifications for the rest of the Horn of Africa. And then we zeroed on Ethiopia, which had at that time one of the most violent and disruptive crises. But when we eventually had the peace agreement, or what we call end cessation of hostilities
Yes, sir.
agreement in Pretoria, two statements were made by members of the delegation, both on the federal government side of it, the federal government side of Ethiopia, and the Tigrayan government side. The one on federal government side was the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General, Gideon. And he said, you do not realize the impact of what we have just done after signing the agreement. That it will amount to saving 1,000 lives every day. To me, that you cannot imagine my own joy that and that was authentically said by somebody who should know. Another thing that was said was the leader of the Tigrayan delegation, the Kachu, who said, we took up arms for survival, and if peace agreement will give us survival, then we will try peace agreement. You know, those two statements, well, there's nothing that I can pay for it.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. This is inspiring, hearing this from you. Would you consider that intervention, based on the feedbacks now that you've gotten, as a success story?
Of course.
Okay. Were there or have there been instances where you've been called upon for interventions and you did a mapping to understand the situation, the causes and the effects, among other things, and you declined, wondering, oh, I don't want to get involved in this? Have there been instances like that?
Well, let me put it this way. I have had instances where I have been called upon to intervene, and I've intervened, and I've come to the conclusion that where we are is not where we should be, and that things will unravel. In 2008, Ban Ki-moon invited me to look at the situation in the east of DRC and the Great Lake region. And after about 18 months, late President Mpaka of Tanzania,
Yes,
who was with me, we concluded our report, and we went to present the report to the then president of DRC. And after we have submitted the report, I went to, before we, I think after we have submitted the report, then president of DRC, as we left his office, I turned to President Benjamin Nkapa, and I said, things will unravel in this country within 3 years. And I almost exactly to date, after 3 years, things unraveled. And President Benjamin Nkapa called me and said, you are an oracle. I said, no, I'm not an oracle. He said, look, what you said has happened. I said, yes. He said, what did you see that time that I did not see? I said, I don't know whether you saw it or not. But when we submitted the report to the president of DRC, I watched his body language. I watched what he said to us. And I saw that his interest was not in the report. His interest was in the election. He only wanted to win the next election, report or no report. And that's what I saw. And that's what happened.
Wow.
And that's why we are still
Wow.
even with the problem
Wow.
of DRC till today. You don't need to be an oracle to see what will happen. You see, the greatest problem of most countries in Africa and of our leaders is what I call mismanagement of diversity. Mismanagement of diversity. And there's no country that is not diverse in one way or the other. And most of our countries are what they are, potentially and in reality, because of that diversity. You take my own country, Nigeria. We are diverse religiously, we are diverse ethnically, we are diverse culturally, we are diverse in language. Now, but it is the totality of this diversity that makes Nigeria a potentially great country. And if we manage it well, yes, we will get there. But if we don't manage it well, we may still get there, but it will take us a long, long time.
Before we come home, before we come to domestic affairs, I still want us to touch upon a few things around foreign policy. You were actively and decisively also, I would say, involved in the pushing for Africa's total liberation in the 70s, and your foreign policy trust contributed to the liberation of Angola, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. You were actively involved in that process. As a civilian president, your government worked for African Renaissance as well, in terms of introducing NEPAD, the transition of African Organization of African Union into African Union, OAU to AU, and also the APRM, Africa Peer Review Mechanism. I mean, when you look back now, do you see these foreign policies? Do you see them as beneficial to Nigerians and Africans? And have you seen any missing gaps?
When let me just take an analogy. Between mainland of Lagos and the island of Lagos, At one time, there was only one bridge, a steel girder bridge called Kata
Bridge, yes.
Kata Bridge. It was steel girder. Then, when I was military head of state, we removed that bridge and replaced it with a concrete bridge. Now, if we haven't replaced it, and we removed it, people will not know that there was once a bridge there. And that is more or less the situation that we suffer in Africa. If something is somewhere and you remove it, or you do not pay attention to it, and it goes into dereliction and doesn't serve the purpose that it should serve, then you don't blame that institution or that factor or that element. You blame those who have allowed it to fall into dereliction and for it not to serve the purpose that is meant to serve. And one of the things that I believe in as far as foreign policy is concerned, I believe in eyeball to eyeball foreign policy. See, when I come to you and I speak to you, and you get that even in our culture, the chances of you looking at me in the face and saying no are slimmer than me just writing to you or sending an emissary to you. So I believe jump in my plane and go. And that, to me, is very important. I also believe that two or three acting together for an issue of African concern is better than one. And this we did. When I was military head of state, and we were working for final liquidation of colonialism.
Yes, sir.
Who do we have to work with? President Kaunda, President Julius Nyerere, who were, if you like, at the front end of the struggle. And because we threw ourselves fully into the struggle, even though by geographical location, we were not at the border, but we were regarded as frontline states, along with Zambia, along with Tanzania. And we work together. Then, when we have secured working together with African leaders, we went further. In the times of Jimmy Callahan, we worked together with Britain. In the time of President Jimmy Carter, we worked together with America. And on our own side here in Nigeria, the time of my time as military head of state, we had Joe Garuba as my foreign minister. Hugo. We had Cyrus Vance as the Secretary of State at the American end, who had the same type of outlook on these issues as we have. We have, as I said, Jimmy Callahan and David Owen. And so at the OAU then, we have Salim Salim, at Tanzania, and then in the UN, America has Andy Young. Now, you can see the composition and the way we worked. So we got ourselves in Africa together. And then we also got our partners together. So at the OAU, we were there. At the UN, we were there. And we were moving together. And we were able to achieve
results. Okay, so is it safe, sir, to also draw from your statement that the eyeball to eyeball engagement, diplomacy, was instrumental to your achieving the debt relief for Nigeria in terms of economic diplomacy?
Of course.
And looking back now, I mean, because you were decisive then in ensuring that Nigeria gets that debt relief, eyeball to eyeball strategy was deployed. But looking back now, are there regrets?
How can there be regrets, my dear brother, that we came in after I came out of prison and I was elected president? What I found left in reserve was $3.7 billion. $3.7 billion. And we had to spend. For
States or Nigeria?
For Nigeria.
Okay.
And we had to spend $3.5 billion to service debt. And the quantum of debt was not going down. So it's unacceptable. And I remember one of my ministers, a minister for agriculture, Bello, whose background was banking. When we got debt relief, what he said to me, I will come back to that. But before I was sworn in, the military head of state then, General Salami Abubakar, gave me a plane and said, look, you have said you wanted to visit those who were kind to you when you were in prison. You can go on and visit them. So I went out. I visited most of the important capitals, London, Paris, Washington, and I was thanking people. And then I went to Wolfenson, who was then the president of World Bank.
Yes, sir.
And I said, Jim, all I want you to do for us is how we can get debt relief. And he said to me, look, that will have to be done by you. But if you are doing what is right, the World Bank will write a good report about you. That's all that the World Bank can do. I said, okay, that was good enough. So I decided to do this eyeball to eyeball diplomacy. And I will go to them and they will listen to me. They will say, oh, you have a good case. Went to all our major creditors, America, France, Japan, UK, and I got the same thing. After 4 years, I didn't get anything. But I get good talk anytime I talk to them. So after my first term, I went to Jim. I said, Jim, I came to see you. You agreed, but you haven't done anything. He said, what more do you want me to do? You are doing well, and we are writing good report about you. That's all I can do. I said, okay, all right. He said, but you have to hold your creditors. They are the ones who can do something about your situation. I said, thank you. Then, of course, Ngozi had come to work with me for 6 months by then. So I turned to him. I said, look, can you give me your girl? He said, and I said, look, 3 things I'm asking for. Give me your girl, pay her salary, and then when she finishes with me, give her her job back. And he said, well, if you want her, I will release her to you. But if you give her a technical job, we will pay her salary. If you give her a political job, we will not pay her salary. And he said, the day he leaves her job, somebody else takes over. But if she comes back and you have favorable report about her, well, we will give her appropriate job. So I then said to him, well, if I give her a technical job, she will not be as effective as I want her to be. Because she will go out and say, I am advisor to president. But if she goes out and said, I am minister, he said, if you make her a minister, we are not going to pay her salary. So I have the first problem. And I wanted her because she understood the international financial situation and the how it works, who should be talked to. So I then called on UNDP. I said, I have this problem, not because of our salary, but because of our children who are in Ivy League universities. And of course, the World Bank pays the school fee of their staff in school. We couldn't afford that. So I went to UNDP, and UNDP said, okay, look, what we want you to do is this. Put $100,000 in an account. We will match it with another $100,000, and we will pay the salary of whoever you want to pay. So two of them, Ngozi and Ambassador Adeniji, who was my minister for foreign affairs, who I brought back from an assignment, a UN assignment. And that was what was done. So, and what were we doing? Now, those people, I call them people who make things happen. The ministers, the director generals, what you would call permanent secretaries. So they are the ones who will write memo. Normally, it doesn't go from top down. It comes from bottom up. But what I was doing, I was going around trying to get it from top down. So after I've spoken to presidents and prime ministers, well, they don't come, they don't call the ministers and director general, give them instruction. So now I've got a person who, when I'm talking to the head of state, he will be talking to those who make things happen, ministers and director general. And that's what happened. So I remember on one occasion I was talking to President Chirac, so rest in peace. And I asked Ngozi not to leave his minister. So I was with our High Commissioner in London, Ambassador Christopher Kolade, and I was using his telephone. Ambassador Kolade, we always say, I used his telephone and I didn't pay for it, jokingly. And I said, but I use your telephone for only 10 minutes. He said, no, he has record. I use it for more than an hour. But that is the sort of thing, on a serious note. And I was engaged with President Chirac. I wanted him, and Ngozi was engaged with his minister. And it's either his minister will get in touch with him and say, hey, this lady has not allowed me to have peace, or the president will get in touch with his minister and say, well, I understand the Minister of Finance of Nigeria. And that's what we did. And eventually, we got Britain under Gordon Brown to actually take on board Nigeria's debt among the G6 then. G6 then, because Russia hasn't been fully part of them. And that is the way. So the eyeball to eyeball diplomacy, or shuttle diplomacy, or whatever way you call it, for me, I believe very much in it.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Flowing from there, eyeball to eyeball diplomacy, to achieve results with that, there's also a need, from what you've just said, there's also a need to have to strategically headhunt the individuals that would achieve this objective for the desired outcome. as a leader. You have to be decisive about that in headhunting the individuals that you want and can achieve the desired results. That's why you took your time to go to World Bank, to second, yes, and also the foreign minister, back then. So looking at that experience and now, where Nigeria is now and some African countries, do we need to be decisive, to be aggressive about debt relief, or still progressively be seeking for?
I don't know what you mean by decisive and aggressive. If less than 20 years ago, we got the debt relief of almost $20 billion. And then we paid about $12.5 billion. And the quantum of our debt was reduced from $36 billion to $3.6 billion. And now, within less than 15 years, we are where we are now. Well, if I were your creditor, I would say, we did this before. What did you do with it?
Wow.
It won't be very easy at all. But I will only say, whoever wants to do it, I will wish him or her the best of, not Nigerian luck, I will say African luck.
Best of African luck. Your Excellency, thank you for that. Before I come back to the next question, I want to encourage the global participants. If you have questions and comments for His Excellency, President Olusegun Obasanjo, obviously this is an interactive session. You can drop the questions in the comment box. We would get it, we'll share the questions with him here, and trust His Excellency, he would respond. But I want to encourage that you make your questions civil, and we'll see how to share as a number of questions here before we round up. Your Excellency, flowing from the debt relief in terms of the economy, I want us to look at the private sector development. You were decisive. Your administration strongly encouraged the private sector in stimulating growth and development, which extended even to promoting African investors, among others. I want you to help us here, because there is a school of thought that believes that most African leaders promote a certain segment of the private sector for their personal interest along the line, and not for national interest, based on the outcomes of these investments or outcomes of this private sector involvement, more or less promoting a section of the society that would be beneficial to the leader at the end of the day, rather than for national interest that would be beneficial for the entire country. Please help us here. When deciding on private sector involvement in the economy, driving the growth and development, what are those factors you put in place?
Thank you very much. Look, one of my greatest friends in the international arena was the late Helmut Schmidt, the former Chancellor of Western Germany. He loved me greatly, and I loved him greatly. And every time we talk about leadership, he will say to me, Olu, your leaders in Africa must have understanding, knowledge of economics. understanding
Knowledge
knowledge
of economics.
of economics. You see, creating job is not the responsibility directly of government. It's for government to produce what I call the conducive, enabling environment. Because if where you have one clerk in a government office, you put a second clerk, one is redundant. And you have not really meaningfully created job. You have created redundancy. So you have to understand that. And saying, how do you go about it? Let's take just one example, and you can take any other example. One day, I didn't sleep too well. And normally, I call anybody any time of the night or the day. And I didn't sleep too well because I was worried about the amount of cement we were importing. And I look, we started producing cement as far back as 1956 or so. The Egyptians, the Turkish people, they were only a few years ahead of us. They were net exporter, and we were still importing heavily. So at about 5 a.m., I phoned Aliko Dangote. I said, Aliko, I want you to come and see me. He said, what time? I said, 7 o'clock in the morning.
And this was 5 a.m.
This was 5 a.m. And Aliko, naughty boy, said, look, it's bad enough that you woke me up at 5 a.m. It's bad enough that you woke me up at 5 a.m. But to ask me to see you at 7 a.m. when you are in Abuja and I'm in Lagos, that's asking for the impossible. Oh, I said, okay. I have no apologies for waking you up. I have problems that I want to solve. But what time can you see me in Abuja? And he said, about 9 a.m. That's okay. So he came in at 9 a.m. And I said, Aliko, answer my question. Why do you import cement rather than produce cement? The raw material for producing cement is almost everywhere. Limestone, that's the main raw material. He said, you want an honest answer? I said, yes, I want an honest answer, of course. He said, because it's more profitable for me to import cement and sell in Nigeria than to produce cement, which is, of course, an honest answer. I said, okay, Aliko, what do I have to do to make you produce cement instead of you importing cement? Now, he said, that's simple. Make it as profitable for me to produce cement as it is for me to import cement and sell. I still haven't got the answer for what I want, what I should do. So then I say, how is that? He said, tie my importation of cement with my production of cement. My head then got it there. And then I say, well, you can go. Then I called my Minister of Trade and Industry, Jamudu, who also came from the private sector. And I said, look, Minister, I've just had this meeting with Aliko, and this and this. So, can we work something out? I said, yes, of course. And then he worked it out. And then it became a policy. And I believe because Aliko knew how it all started and all that, Aliko went for 5 million tons of cement production at the first instance. And anytime I talk about this with Aliko now, I say, Aliko, you are greedy. And he will say, if you give me the same opportunity again, I will be greedier. And that's what happened. So Aliko went, Obajana. I will tell you another story. I was watching that development almost on hourly basis. So any day he employed Julius Baja to do good the civil work and all that. And they're good people. So the day Julius Baja failed to work, I will hear the information, the report. And I will call Aliko. I say, hey, Julius Baja didn't work yesterday. What happened? So one day, Aliko came to me and said, look, I'm getting worried about you. This project is not government project. And you are not even allowing me to rest. The day Julius Baja didn't work. I said, yes, it is not government project, but it's Nigerian project. Today, Aliko alone can supply all the cement we need in Nigeria. Not only that, he can also supply the cement that some of the countries that he has established cement factory will need. Senegal, Ethiopia, Tanzania, I think he has got something in South Africa too. But this is the way.
In essence, Your Excellency, what you're saying is that you are not a leader or a president should not only encourage or develop a private sector player to develop the system, the economy, but they also have to put their eyes.
No, you have to help them. It's not enough just to say, hey, go and do it. You have to help them. Whatever they need to achieve the objective, you have to help them. And I say this, look, if a Nigerian in the private sector makes money, what can he do? Provided the money is in Nigeria, what can he do? The worst, he will marry more wives. Now, it's helping to solve Nigerian social problem. Because the extra wife he marries, he will look after them, he will look after their family, so why don't I encourage?
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for that light note. I mean, questions are coming in from Fritz, Professor Joy, and Dr. Iwu. I'm going to take those questions, but before I take the questions, I need to ask His Excellency this. We're coming domestic now. We're coming back home. Nigeria is on a great momentum towards the elections in a few weeks, and you've openly given an advice and encouragement on the direction in which the youths and Nigerians should look towards in terms of leadership for Nigeria, among other things. But then before responding, digging into that. What drives the motivation, Your Excellency, to write open letters to candidates that you may have supported to become president? Is it as a result of the failure of back channel counsel behind the scene, or the inaccessibility to them at some point? What's the drive for the open letters, sir?
Well, I will talk about open letters. Let me, the issue of policy
Okay.
that we are going to leave. You know, I was jokingly saying to people the other day, as when I was in government, my ambition was to create 50 Nigerian billionaires, and that, of course, there was no Nigerian billionaire before then, and that I failed. I think I probably created about 40, which was 80% of my ambition.
40, you tried, Your Excellency.
But
It's still a pass mark.
No. Well, that's outstanding.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
80 is a pass mark,
Yes.
Your Excellency.
Yeah, but I haven't even stopped because I'm still.
You are still on that trajectory.
Producing more.
I'm still going. But on this very serious note,
Yes.
there was nobody among these people that I gave a dime. We created policy, and they took advantage of the policy. That's all. I did not give Aliko one dime. He didn't give me one share in his cement factory. I don't need it. But we created policy, we devised policy, and they took advantage of that. Now, that to me is what government should be all about. Get the right policy and encourage people to take care of, just
Take advantage of it.
take advantage of the policy. And now the private sector will not equalize. They will make and develop. Government policy also should be to equalize.
Okay.
Now let me come to
Open letters.
open letters. There's no leader that has come after me that I have not gone quietly to. And when I was president, some former leaders also came to me. And my own system is that if you come and you say A, B, C, the one that I cannot answer immediately, I will get the answer, and within 24 hours, I will communicate with you. But when you go to a leader and you say A, B, C, D, and one of them said, please give me the note on which you wrote it, which I did. And what I heard later on was that he showed somebody. He said, you see, look at the note he wrote. But I ignored it. Or, let me give you another one. Before an election, may his soul rest in peace, Ahmed Jordan, a good friend of mine, came to me and said, look, let us do something. I said, what do you want to do, Ahmed? He said, for security, defense and security. Let's do something. I said, good idea. Since it's your idea, form a committee. They form a committee. The committee was working. And then another of within the what I call Prudential Library
Yes.
um,
Set up.
setup.
Yes, sir.
Another one of our colleagues said, when you do defense and security, economy nko? Oh, I said, well, since economy is your own idea, you deal
With that.
with the economy. Another one came and said, you do defense and security, you do economy. What of education, which is very important? I said, since you are the one who brought this, and we spend money. And then fourth one was somebody coming and said, health. And the person we picked for health was a Nigerian, distinguished Nigerian in the US. He came 4 times, spending his own money, his own personal money, and we produced report, 4 reports. And Ahmed Joda became the man who will be the chairman of transition. Oh, we said, it is good, wonderful. Ahmed, where are the reports? The 4 of them, the 4 chairmen, went, they delivered the report. The man to whom they delivered the report never read one of them. Never read one of them. Again, I came to hear later that Obasanjo, to influence me, wrote report. I just passed the report to. So, what do you say to that? I influence you. Influence you to do what?
To do what?
And one on the health one of the members of that committee for health is being honorary, so to say, advisor to Minister of Health today. And he said to me, it is that report is using.
Wow.
Now, so when you have a situation like that, is it necessary for you to continue to waste your time? But then it must be on record for posterity.
That's the essence. It
For
must be on record.
posterity.
Okay.
And maybe somebody will make use of it tomorrow.
Okay, sir.
But I've written open letters to people.
Yes, sir.
Take Mrs. Thatcher on South Africa. She was very adamant that what is necessary, what is needed is not the uprooting of apartheid policy, but just give a bit of change. And I said,
No.
apartheid cannot be reformed. Apartheid must be uprooted. And then I have to put that in an open letter. So what crime have I committed?
Okay, Your Excellency.
So, whether the letter is open
Or closed.
or not open, what I believe is that I will be punished by God if I know what I believe is right, and I did not put it where it should be put. Public domain, if and private domain, if it will work out on the private domain.
The most important thing is it's inside a domain.
It has to be.
It has a domain. Your Excellency, your recent letter to Nigerians, towards the elections, endorsed a particular candidate.
No, I don't like the word endorse. That's what.
Yes,
please,
I'm coming, sir.
Yeah,
I'm coming, sir.
come.
Based on the school of thoughts and assessment and reports out there, I'm going somewhere, Your Excellency.
And let me know where you are going.
Yes, sir. that letter amounted to an endorsement. I'm coming, sir. And in essence, a particular phrase or a particular sentence of that letter I want to quote, that the candidate has people who can pull his ears if and when necessary. End of quote. Linking that to the reaction of others that may have also visited you, Your Excellency. The question now is, when those visitations happened, was your support requested? Did they also request your endorsement?
What do you think anybody will come to me for if he wants to contest the election? Or just to come and greet me?
So when they come,
no. I'm asking you the question.
They're seeking for something.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Your Excellency. You are because
let me deal with that.
Yes, sir.
And the word I use is that one particular candidate has an edge.
Yes.
Has an edge. Taking everything together. And I take character. I take track record. I take vision. And I take, what you see in this man as a man who is walked with God, as a child of God. And I said they all claim to be my mentee. And of course I won't deny that. But if they are my mentee, and then they must also admit that I know them a little bit. And if I then know them a little bit, I must be right to be able to say, look, I don't know what people... I've done this in the past. For President Buhari, I said President Buhari does not really understand economy. And that is true, and you have seen it. I wasn't running him down. That's what he is. He himself will admit that. I said his understanding of foreign affairs is also very little. Because when he was military head of state, he said his front line does not go beyond the borders of Nigeria. That's a pity. And of course, we managed to let him understand that his front line goes beyond the borders of Nigeria. But so what then do you have? I write a letter that is almost 6.5 pages, whichever way you take it. And then only one sentence. Now, and I have one thing that I have found very interesting is, and I've said that several times, is the preacher now who goes round and in his among his congregation, he said, look, I take it that all of you have decided who you will vote for. I don't want to know who you will vote for. But those who have decided who you will vote for, put up your hands. A lot of them in the congregation put up their hands. And he said, I will pray for you. And then he said, may your children have the character of the man you will vote for. Hands started coming down. May your children have the attribute. May your children behave like the man you will vote for. Nobody said that. Now, the question is this. Now, why should you, as a Nigerian, vote for somebody, the character, the reputation, the life of which you don't want your own children to be? It's either you are wicked, you are unpatriotic, you are really, really a bad citizen of this country. And then, if this is what you are, what do you want God to do with you? And that's the way I see that. And then I also say that, look, all these people have what they can contribute to nation building, just as you have. I believe I have. I don't have to go to Also Villa to be able to make contribution. You don't have to. But for the last 3 days, he saw them. I have about 35 youth who have been with me. I've spoken to them on 3 occasions. And what is very, very serious with them is 1, education, 2, security, 3, corruption. They have other things, but these are the 3 most important things. So if they are youth and these are their concerns, who can address their concern?
Obviously, Your Excellency, you have the inalienable right to encourage and to point in the direction of who on who to support or that you believe is right for Nigeria as we speak. So the particular statement of pulling the ears, I mean, there are people.
Oh, yeah, pulling the ears, yeah.
Yes.
You know, in my own culture, they will say, have a leader who has a lafisun. Have a leader who has a lafisun.
For the benefit of our international audience.
For the benefit of your international audience.
Yes.
A lafisun is somebody to whom he can be reported to. Now, that's pulling the air. And when I was military head of state, I have 3 people who, if anything happens, I will rush to them quietly. Dr. Ebiam, Sir Kashim Ibrahim, and Chief Simeon Adebo. I will talk to them. And I give you an example. In 19 1977, the economy went down. In 1976, you can go and look at record. We supported over 150,000 people to go to Mecca. That is the foreign money that we have to give them. And in 1977, there's no way we could do that. So I quietly went to Sakashim Ibrahim. And of course, what I will do is, I won't say I'm going to Sakashim Ibrahim. I say I'm visiting what is the state then, either Northwest or Borno State, whatever.
Yes, sir.
But in the evening, I will call on the elder statesman. And I said, look, I have this problem. And he said, okay. Go to the Sultan. He said, don't touch it. Go to the Sultan. And I went to the Sultan. I went back to Lagos. About 2 or 3 days later, I went to the Sultan then. And Sultan said, yes, Sakashim has spoken to him. How many people do you want to go to Mecca? I said, no. Sultan, you don't get me right. It's not me to decide how many people will go to Mecca. It's just that, look, last year, over 150,000. This year, we cannot do it. Say, yes, I understand. But how many people do you want to go? I say, if I'm the one dictating how many people, that will be wrong. I said, look, yes, I know I will do my work, but how many people? I said, not more than a third of last year. I said, that you can go. That's what I want to hear from you. Then he set up a panel who will decide the conditions for going to Mecca that year. My brother, 48,000 people, 48,000, not even up to 1/3, went to Mecca. My hand no day there.
Your hand was not there.
No.
Yes, sir. Okay.
My hand was not there, but it was done. And everybody was laughing. I got what I wanted to get. Are you the instrumentality of a person who can do it? And we were, if I have said, oh, the number of Muslims that will go to Mecca, in Nigerian situation, I, a Christian, now saying the number of people who will go to Mecca, I will set the country on fire.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for this wisdom that you have deployed again today. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to run through some questions very briefly.
Okay.
We have 10-15 minutes to round up this session.
Okay.
And
do it quickly because I want to go out.
I will run through them and just speak. Your responses from there, Your Excellency. Fritz Ando, what's your honest view why multi-party hasn't worked for Africa, multi-party system, and what system would you recommend? Why multi-party system hasn't worked for Africa? I'm not sure about that. And what system would you recommend? Professor Joy Onyeso is asking a compound question on political inclusion, gender inclusion, and conflict management for women, especially. Dr. Iwu Nauma Isent, sometime in the past, you granted an interview to Times Magazine in which you said that the elites are the problem of Nigeria. Do you still hold that view? Rashid Raji commends you a lot, and his question is on leadership ramifications. As a leader, how do you identify and align the need of the people to policy? How do you identify and align the need of the people to policies? Why welfare policies reflect minimal or majority of the people in Nigeria? Baba Femi Momo says, it's full of commendation for you. And sir, what's your honest assessment of the current presidential aspirants? I think you've touched up on that. Yes, and your their disposition to public and private. Yeah. Ishola Folonshaw is saying one way of creating employment is a stable power supply. Given the amount of capital invested in the power sector, what must be done to make the power sector stable? Virgie Onyene is interested in Baba's eye-to-eye diplomacy. That's a new phrase that is quite poignant, sir. The observation is and worry is, how do we use this as a strategic intervention tool for entrenching people-oriented policy implementation, as well as effective downstreaming of executive decisions? Abraham Adefila is saying, Your Excellency, thank you for your good executive decision while in office. What happens if Obi wins the next election and is denied victory? I mean, these are not questions I do not, and finally, from Professor Richard.
Yes, okay.
Can we invite His Excellency to address the challenges in Nigeria today?
Okay.
Thank you so much, participants, for the questions that you've shared and thrown in. I think I've tried in sharing some of these questions with His Excellency, and in his usual manner, we can see how detailed he is. He's still writing at 85 plus. Please, Your Excellency, over to you. We have 10 minutes.
I will deal with this quickly. I don't believe that multi-party system has failed. What if you ask me that what is one problem of a political nature in Nigeria, I would say leadership. It is more of leadership rather than the multi-party system itself. I don't believe it has failed, and I believe that the extent to which we have people who play the democratic game the way it should be played, the more we will entrench our democracy.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Yes.
Now, then, women inclusion. You know, I was the first to bring a number of women into cabinet, and then I was also instrumental to say that women should not have to pay anything if they are contesting for any elective office. We have, and we must admit this, we have male chauvinistic society. This is the truth. Whether it's in the north or in the south, we have male chauvinistic society. What I always say is that our women folk, you cannot get a change without making use of your men. These men are your fathers, they are your brothers, they are your husbands, they are your boyfriends, they are, now don't laugh.
Yes.
Why are you not making use of them? And I believe that we need to make use of our men folk for the changes that we need to have in our society that will be in the best interest of women. The point is this: women are, in fact, in our population a little bit more than men. A little bit more than men. Yeah. And if 50% of your population are put down, then you are 50% deficit in your developmental effort.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. We understand you are running for an engagement.
I'm running for an engagement. Yes. I will finish. Needs of the people to needs of the people match to policies. I don't see why any policy should not be based on the needs. In fact, at one time, if you remember, we have needs and seeds and all
needs
that.
And seeds, yes,
policy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It should be. There's not policy should not be anything other than based on the needs of the people. What assessment of candidates have done that? Power sector. Power sector, I believe that we didn't get it right. The we should have done power the way we did communication or telecommunication. We did not do it that way. And that was a failure. Eye-to-eye diplomacy, it worked for me, and I believe
it's a recommendation for others. Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Can I be invited to challenge to be involved in the challenge of
to address the challenges of Nigeria today?
I don't know how Joseph want to Professor Richard Joseph want to do that because I will not contest any position. But if like this is to talk about issues and things, and if anybody comes to me to ask for advice, I will give him the best that I can afford to give. So
we thank you. We thank you so much, Your Excellency. We thank you for our international participants and global audience. Most especially, we want to thank the Africa Leadership Forum and, importantly, the Nigerian Institute for International Affairs. Professor Osa Osage, we salute you. We want to thank our distinguished panelists, the lead panelists, Emeritus Professor Richard Joseph, who had to stay up, wake up so early in the States, and Professor Joy Onyeso. We profoundly appreciate you for leading the gender. Baba is clapping for you for leading the gender initiative in Nigeria and in Africa. My final word to every single one that has participated in this session is that from now on, you are a Tell Africa champion, and we are going to be holding our former leaders accountable. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening.